That's all right.
Oh yeah, there we go. There we go. Yeah, gotcha. All right. So
Well, good to see you again, old friend.
it is
How
good to see you again. Yeah.
yesterday, I think,
Oh
but
yeah.
we didn't hardly talk because you were just listening to someone else.
No, it was good stuff. It's always a good review to remember, like the relationship between right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. That's always a good thing to refresh, considering how easy it is to let the donkey get mad. Right? I think 2, 3 lessons ago, yeah, we talked about being careful. Right? The donkey only knows that it's plodding away, and so the donkey is like, "Why am I plodding away?" So it's definitely important, yeah, to remind ourselves of what the distinction between wrong view, right view, and then noble right view is. So it's always good stuff. It's good stuff.
Mm.
I'm a very forgetful person.
Yes, it's always good to remind.
Mhm.
This is one of the reasons, in fact, why it is. Um, it appears, at least, to be quite important from the way that the suttas are done. That the men of the time of the Buddha,
Mm.
um, many of them became monks. Others were householders, but the householders who understood the teachings of the Buddha spent a lot of their time with the monks.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so this is the whole quality of what we call kaliyametta,
Mhm.
or to have spiritual friends.
Mhm.
Because most of the time we live, almost everyone who starts to practice meditation is around ordinary people,
Mm.
even if they're in a group of meditators.
Mhm.
They're still around a whole lot of ordinary people, but at least this group of people, because what they have in common is the Dhamma,
Right.
that's what they will talk about, and that's good. It's good to spend time when we're with our friends and associates to talk about things that are wholesome
Right. Exactly.
and beneficial rather than talking about politics or other things like how bad it is.
Mhm.
Now, while I really enjoy using politics as examples of Dhamma, that's all they are because we're really talking about Dhamma. We're not talking about politics.
Right. Right.
And yet, that seems to be all the rage now in the United States, especially this week.
The impeachment trial. Right. 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 Okay.
And so people spend their time doing that. But really, you're you're getting wise enough now to understand that the people that you want to associate with are
Hmm.
Dhammadus.
Right. It's always good to keep it in mind. Cause yeah, I think it's definitely easy to like stumble back into the old routine if all you do is like stay in the city. It's definitely easy. So it's important to get some refreshers once in a while.
New York City, beyond any other city in the world, so I have heard, will grab people by the throat
Oh
in
yes.
a kind of a unique way that if you go to New York, it's got you.
Oh yeah, I gotta check out. Yeah, yeah, totally.
And it is hard to come out of New York while you're still in New York,
Right.
but you
Exactly.
can do it.
Yeah.
Um, and in that regard, I have heard that there are meditation groups and centers
Mm-hmm.
in New York, and I was wondering, have you thought about going to any of them?
So before I had signed up for lessons here, I had actually gone to the Insight. Okay, I don't remember what it was. It wasn't the Insight Meditation Society. There is a Insight. I think Insight Meditation Center. That one is relatively well known. And there was a. I attended begin a beginner's introduction to meditation class at the time there, and I think sometimes they do have like meetups or like retreats, but I've never like after like it's been like 3 4 years since I've gone because I usually just come home and sit instead of going there and sit. Um, yeah, I just never really went there. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, now I'm thinking of it not in the sense of going there to learn meditation or to sit with them, because you know how to do that now.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But to associate with them because they're probably more wholesome and worthy of your association than the folks that are going to be at the local bar.
Wow, that you're giving me a really high hat right there. Oh God.
I know. I don't expect you to spend much time in the local bar. Don't wear that hat.
Yeah, that's a pretty high hat right there. Gotcha. Yeah, I could probably check it out again, because sometimes I still get their emails. I just haven't bothered to really read them, to be honest. So yeah, I could probably read and just see what's up there. Oh, but yeah, I can. Yeah, I'll just like check, and then I'll probably let you know, like what's going on. Probably transition to the past 2 weeks, since I think like it's been 2 weeks since we last spoke, not counting yesterday. So yeah, basically the past 2 weeks. I remember last time we were talking about basically some sense of disconnectedness, right? Exploring. We touched on themes of death, I remember, and that we really weren't the body. And so for the past 2 weeks, sometimes when I'm walking, I'm like, oh look, the body is walking. But sometimes I have this sense, because I wonder how much of it is actually the body walking versus the intention to walk and then the body walking. Because at certain times, it definitely feels like the body is on autopilot. It will instinctively, like shoving into the subway to make the commute, or walking up the very familiar, ramp in the train station. Those times it really feels like, like there's like a shell that's walking. Other times when you're hauling a bag up the stairs, it does it feels like the intention is like, let's do it, like let's do it. So sometimes I wonder how much, like how blurry like the lines are actually. Yeah.
Actually, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the information that I have that I'll share now has to do with robotic engineers working with biologists in order to develop vehicles or robots that can climb and operate the way that animals do. And that one of the things that they have found out is that the mind itself does not have to do much of the work, that you can design the robot so that it can walk by merely giving it very little signal at all.
Right.
Imagine that you've got an alligator that the way that it walks is because it turns its body to the right. And by turning its body to the right, that frees up and makes the left side of the body longer than the right side of the body, so that the front step then, or the feet, then will move forward. Now the alligator's body only needs to move to the left. And by doing that, then the right legs are with that arc now. You can see that the legs are like this on a straight line. But now when they're arced, because the body is arced, now the legs are out.
I see.
Okay. And so you can actually design robots so that all it gets is just one signal, on and off, because another signal walking. So you turn on the walking signal, and now all you have to do is turn on the left and then turn it off, and then it goes right.
Yeah, I've definitely.
And so it almost takes no logic, no computer. So you could do a walking for an alligator in 2 lines of code.
Yeah, because it's interesting, because I actually have a friend who was a PhD he's a student now. He hasn't graduated. He's a candidate, and part of his initial research was actually, this is obviously like a non sequitur, but into like a gait analysis. And he had shown me some videos where you have a robotic frame and you push the frame once, and the frame will actually carry on like walking, because apparently the human gait has evolved to be so efficient that you could probably, I don't remember the exact like how long, but you could basically walk a very long time before exhausting all of your available energy before the body basically gives out, because apparently a lot of the momentum from one step actually easily transfers into the next, which is maybe sometimes why when walking on things like a ramp that's not so demanding, it actually does feel automatic. Maybe, yeah.
A really, really clear example of that is the dog.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one time in specific where I really learned this lesson,
Mm-hmm.
to where the car broke down
Mm-hmm.
and the dog was with, and so we have to hike it.
Mm-hmm.
And the major problem was the dog could not keep up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now this dog was quite energetic. She was all over the house. She was just, playful and everything. But the dogs, the human body is efficient in a way that the dog's body is not. So
Mm-hmm.
that the human can, we actually evolved that way in
Mm-hmm.
order to be able to travel for long distances that the dog can't do.
Mm-hmm. Right. Gotcha.
And so,
Yeah.
yes, there are these efficiencies, but I'm also looking at it in the sense of how little there is of signal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That in fact, the signaling system for walking
Mm-hmm.
is only with the intention of the walking, which is very easy. I mean, you can, here's a clear example of that.
Mm-hmm.
Here the meditator is sitting on the floor
Mm-hmm.
saying, I'm doing a good job with my meditation and everything is nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then he recognizes that actually my right arm is opening the door to the refrigerator. How did I get off the floor, into the kitchen, into the front of the refrigerator without even knowing it? That's how much automatic pilot we have.
Right. Exactly. Gotcha.
Which means that all of that behavior and all of that stuff was really buried in the reptilian part of the brain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you can see that then the reptilian part of the brain is basically on the analogy of a laptop. It's the bus.
Mm-hmm.
It's the main processor. Is for the human is the frontal cortex, not the reptilian brain.
Mm-hmm.
But everything that a snake and an alligator can do,
Mm-hmm.
everything that an alligator can do, is done by our human reptilian part of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing, hearing, being able to chew food, being able to walk, all of that stuff is very primitive part of the brain.
I see. Right.
And that the only thing that we need to do was to have that original intention. Well, see, when you're hauling something up the steps,
Mm-hmm.
then the reptilian brain and or the child inside of us is rebelling. Hey, this
Mm-hmm.
is a lot of work. I don't want to do it. And so now it needs a new kick in the pants of a new intention. Well, one more step.
Yeah.
Drag it at least up the step, one more step,
Exactly.
And so you're exactly right
Mm-hmm.
that that some things that we do require the intention to come up over and over and over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
to where mostly when things are, let us say, already habitual, that
Mm-hmm.
all it needs is a very small signal to get things started,
Right.
and then things will play out at
Exactly.
a much deeper level out there on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the reason I use the bus is because I'm coming from mainframe.
Mm-hmm. I see.
All right, mainframes don't have buses; they have channels, and sometimes the channels have processors in them that are far more sophisticated with programming and whatnot than the average laptop's
Mm-hmm.
processor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so out there on the channel where all of these hard drives, for instance, on a mainframe, you can give an order for the channel itself to move files from one drive to another, where all of that has to be done on the main processor on a PC.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the backups and all of that kind of stuff never take any power away from the processor. This is why with those kind of machines, AI can be done at such a blistering speed.
Right. Exactly. I see.
It's because stuff is given off to other processors that are not part of it. Well, most people, we live our lives like that. We just let the old reptilian brain do most of the work.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And that's really dangerous when they let the reptilian brain do most of the work when they're in the voting booth.
Oh yes. Yes. Oh yes. Oh, exactly.
That's a joke, son. That's a joke.
Oh yes.
Yeah, you don't have any human beings in voting booths. You only have reptiles.
I mean, that's maybe where all the lizard people memes are coming from, right? Like,
Yeah, right. Yeah, the attack of the lizard people are us.
yeah. So, and then over the past 2 weeks, I haven't like really watched it yet, but I actually came across an interesting YouTube video, which was how do you call those things? When they have a dead body and they cut it open to look at what's inside. Autopsies.
Ah, yes.
Because we had discussed several times, it might be interesting to watch an autopsy happen just to see what the body is like. I'll probably send it to you. The particular purpose of the autopsy was not, let's just do an autopsy for surgical. It was actually part of a British documentary about obesity. And basically, my understanding is I read the summary. I didn't, really watch it. I didn't have time to watch it yet. But it's an hour long, and they basically talk about the effects of obesity on the organs of the body. And then, I watched like the first maybe 5-10 minutes, and yeah, like it's whoa! I did not know what happens to the body as it decays. And they were talking about yes, the first signs of decay and all that stuff. And they show you these close up. I'm like, wow, okay.
Yeah. It's
Forget
not
that.
just the stomach that's fat, it's the liver too. And the kidneys. All of that stuff is all over the place. Exactly right.
Yeah, so I'll send you the link, afterwards.
Okay.
It's worth watching. I got through like 10 minutes and then I had to stop. But like,
Well, here's the thing before you fast forward it,
mhm.
look at your intention for doing
Oh,
so. Because basically what's going on is the stuff that you're looking at is disgusting.
oh yes, oh yes.
Yeah, the human body really is disgusting.
Yeah, there was a section on like in the beginning they were talking about oh she died of heart failure, and then they were like how do we know? Well, and then they show you these close up shots of basically like sores and like like little bumps of liquid on her legs, and that's because the heart failed, so there's liquid built up in the legs. And I was like, oh my god. I was like, oh my god, and I haven't even gotten to the part where they actually do the autopsy.
I haven't even
Yeah.
opened it up yet.
Um, yeah, and then last week, yeah, then I got sick over the long weekend. Um, I had met some of my friends for dinner on Friday, and then when I got back, a couple coughs here and there. And then by the time it was Saturday and Sunday, lots of coughs and then a mild sore throat. And so I didn't call, last week. But other than that, the practice itself is good. The formal practice is getting back on track. I mean, it's sitting there for either 30 or 45 minutes, depending on how fast I come back from home. And yeah, the point is, it feels nice, especially after the talk from yesterday. Yeah, no matter how, but no matter how like I guess yeah. Hold on one second. Messi, yeah, there. Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Okay.
Is that the Zen master?
Oh no,
Come
that's
say hello.
oh yeah, that's my mom. Yeah.
Oh, that was your mom. Okay. Well, ask her to come say hello.
Oh yeah, you should say hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hello. How are you? You got a smile on your face. That's great.
Yeah, I just ignore everything.
I mean, yeah.
Just ignore it.
Yeah, so she's doing
that,
well.
that was good advice then, right? Just
Yeah, it's working for her. But yeah. Okay. Yeah. Have a good night. Okay. But
Okay,
yeah.
bye-bye.
Have a good night. Whereas, oh yes. So yeah, like basically, yeah, it's nice to remember, that to come. It's very easy to come back. Although sometimes I notice, when I informally remember, I come back. I don't focus too much on the rapture, and so that's also something to keep reminding myself of, to really focus on the rapture. Because like when you're programming and you remember to come back, you're like, okay, yeah, great, let's come back, and then you just keep going. But like I'm beginning to notice, yes, there are certain times where you kind of slack off and you don't really enjoy the fact that you come back, and these are always points for continuing practice. Um, and then maybe one thing that has come up in the past 2 weeks that's probably worth talking about, is at the end of every year, the corporate workplace, gives you a performance-based adjustment to your salary. And here's something, that I want to hear your thoughts on. And sometimes I think about this too. I've thought about this too. So, like people who are younger in the workforce, like me, right? Like you don't really know how to deal with questions when people ask you, how were your numbers, right? And so usually we're fine with, sharing the whole thing. Yeah, here was the salary, and here's the whatever, like the extra, compensation or the incentive. But why is it? Sometimes I wonder, why is it that the people who are more, I guess, like seasoned in the office, they usually discourage, sharing these kinds of figures with the with your coworkers, and their reason is because there are differences in performance, and so if you share things like that, people who have a lower number might feel they might feel bad, or they might feel antagonized, and it is valid, right? Because like if you look around, like people are susceptible to these things. If you're working in like if you're surrounded by like an ordinary workplace. But sometimes I wonder, people who originally don't know to do this, right? If nobody tells them, all this stuff, and let's suppose like it's like a little thought experiment, right? Like if nobody tells you that, like, oh, this is actually really bad. Like if you do it like that, it'll be bad, and people will get jealous, right? Because if you tell somebody like that, then they actually kind of pick up, oh, okay, so actually people get jealous, and then maybe I get jealous, like if this is so and so. So this is just like I guess like a rambling like thought experiment, but I guess like the point is, yeah, like I wonder how many like habits aren't actually like what am I trying to say? Like a self. Like, I wonder how many of these things are self-fulfilling, right? Like if somebody is born and you don't tell them like this thing will lead to this, or this thing is bad, and then you actually tell them that, and then they know to look out for it, and in the process it actually becomes a thing because you told them like it would be like that. I'm just rambling. Like sorry, yeah. At this point,
Willie, you have really, really touched on something that's very, very complex and needs to be looked at from a variety of angles.
I see.
And that, in fact, by looking at it from the variety of angles, you can begin to understand the intricacies of the dynamics. So let's start with this one.
Right.
It is to the advantage of the organization to keep that data private. That I remember way back when I was working for IBM, that it was a big no-no for individuals to talk about what salaries they had. Now, in the organization that I was in, because we were in a relatively small town, and we're talking about in the 1960s, that it was actually Florence, South Carolina, which is a fairly large city in South Carolina. But IBM had only enough equipment there so that we were able to manage it with a staff of about 7 or 8.
Right.
But that's not really where IBM normally lives. They normally live at really, really big plant, like in White Plains or in Rochester, Minnesota. They've got huge factories, that kind of stuff. And I'm talking about IBM 1960s, not what it is now. It's a completely different organization. But they knew that if they allowed the employees to know what everybody else made, or in fact, if it was a union shop.
Mm-hmm.
And in a union shop, everybody does know what everybody else is making. That's what the whole point of the
Yeah.
union is. That's why IBM would do anything they could to break unions.
Oh,
All big companies do. They do not want the employees to know that kind of information for a whole variety of reasons.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now let's talk about an individual person
Mm-hmm.
who finds out that his workmate got more benefit or makes more
Mhm.
money than he does.
Right. Then he feels bad. Everybody like right, like
Right, and then he's going to either take it out on the building or on the boss or on the other employee. Exactly.
So that
All
part's
right.
definitely understandable. Like that part, that's the ordinary, right? Like that's, I mean,
Well, that's the story that the employers want to tell you
I see.
without looking at their advantage in it.
Oh, I mean, they can keep everybody in the dark, right? Like about, they
Right, okay.
people might be, right?
So this is also part of the reason that, for instance, nowadays it's coming out that women don't make as much as men,
Oh, yes.
that black men don't make as much as white men, and that black women are at the bottom of the tier. And yet some of the most, right now I got to tell you, some of the best politicians, some of the women who are doing a really good job in a public level are all black women.
Oh, yes.
They are really, really underestimated.
Exactly.
That at my mom's rest home, I let a black woman be the manager of the whole rest home, and I got flack from that.
Really?
Who do I get flack from? One of the places I got flack from it was the state of North Carolina. The state of North Carolina is racist as an organization.
That's yeah. I mean, so, I mean, yeah. So yeah.
And her name was Joyce, and she was a really good friend of mine. And one of the things that really brought her to me was that she could see that I was the only white man that she had ever met in North Carolina who was not racist.
I see. That was not racist. I see.
Was not racist. And she knew that I was not racist even before I promoted her to manager.
Wow.
That I'd been in her home. And so when I would have to do something that required me being a tough boss to a black employee, she knew that it was not racial. But normally the black people, when someone of the black community gets fired or demoted or have money cut or whatever like that, they see it as a racist. Well, guess what? There's almost always a racist element in there.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so it is in fact in the promotion of racism, in the promotion of sexism, that big companies do not want employees to know what the benefit packages are for everyone.
Right. Exactly. I mean, yeah, like if we work in such a, I mean, like definitely, the in the conventional setting, like the conventional, like wisdom applies, but it definitely, right, exactly. I see.
Okay, so there's another issue that's in there that can be best addressed in the following way. One of the things about psychologists is that they generally, and I mean, this is discussed in school, that they generally do not tell the client what's wrong with them.
Oh, because they don't want to suggest something. They don't want to auto.
Well, they will suggest, but if you tell the client actually what's wrong with him, one of two things might happen. And that is that the client will say, "Thank you very much for helping me figure this out. We'll catch you later. Bye-bye." And the other possibility is, if you tell the client what's wrong with them, they'll say, "How dare you? You don't know anything." And he walks out in a huff. But in both cases, it's dangerous because the therapist could lose the client by telling them what's wrong with them or being honest with them.
Let's see.
Now, here's another, just a small aspect of that in the sense of looking at Kamma, in the sense of what's the right action and what's the wrong action. I think you heard this yesterday. You might not have been on there. about if you really criticize someone, like, let's say on Skype, if I really criticize you and you don't like it and you stop calling, then was my criticism, was that a good action or a bad action?
Right.
Oh, well, you stopped calling, so therefore it must have been a bad action. But if I tell somebody what's wrong with them and they say, gosh, you're right,
Then
that
it's
was really helpful, thank you very much, then that criticism is a good action. So the psychologist has to be able to suss out who it is that they can tell what to at the right time,
So I
because
think
it's downright dangerous to tell somebody what's wrong with them.
right.
The truth shall set them free, but it's really going to piss them off if it comes from you at the wrong time.
Exactly. So I think, okay, so I have to go in maybe like a minute because it's like 12 here, but I think this might be a good, like a stopping point for the next discussion, which is, I mean, the law of karma, from like previous discussions, there's something I also want to check my understanding is that, so far, what I remember from, last time's discussions and from previous discussions, is that, the ordinary, understanding of karma, which is related to the ordinary right view, is that do good things, get good things, play shit games, like win shit prizes, right? Whereas what we understand is often the interactions, these little interactions, they're so numerous that it's actually more likely impossible to predict and understand precisely what the effect is. And it is often we go backwards into if you were actually wanted to talk about good or bad, you would actually be going backwards, like we've done just like right now. And the reason why we go beyond good and bad is because good and bad are like attachments, like the Buddha said, like when you were reading about the how, like reading from the like the suttas yesterday, because good and bad are notions of like if I do this, it's good because it's going to lead, like fundamentally you say like it's going to lead to good results or something like that, or even if you don't expect results, the reason why we say something is good is if you think about, sometimes I think about this, when we say it's good according to a set of rules, or it's good because I like it, because it, like the people who put the rules down like it. So it seems to me to be the case.
Yes, exactly. This gets into, maybe you've never heard me use this, but I used to use this phrase a lot. It's called criteria selection.
Oh yeah, I haven't heard this one. Yeah.
Okay. Criteria selection means that it's mostly used in industry. But if you're going to determine whether in this plant we're going to make this change to this machine or replace it with that other machine, we have to make that choice based upon a set of criteria.
Right.
And that means that if we do not think about how we select a criteria, we may in fact use the wrong criteria to make the selection. Therefore, we need to make a selection on the right criteria. In other words, we need to figure out what rules to follow, because the rules will then determine what is good and what is bad. But which rule we apply,
right, is the key
is the key to the question. So we can discuss this later, but the key issue is criteria selection. How do we know how to choose, how to apply the aspects of what's to be done?
I see. It seems like wisdom, right? The Buddha's answer would be wisdom.
This is criteria selection. Now that's wisdom.
So yesterday, during the discussion, this is like one of my last thoughts, but like yesterday during that discussion, it seems like somebody can come to understand noble right view by actually getting screwed over a couple times with wrong view, right? Like if they do wrong view, like things in wrong view, and then they remember like to review what happened, it seems like they would be able to gradually understand what noble right view is, right? Because they try it doesn't work, they burn their hands, and then they realize. Well, you have to remember to realize, but like, but like if you realize, then you're like noble right view. Huh. So now I kind of question, it seems like what you were talking about yesterday, that noble right view is experience. The interesting question then becomes, like, I guess this goes back to the whole thing, right? You can't really just like study the books and then say like, yep, I got it down, like noble right view. Because now my question then becomes this is more a thought experiment, just for funsies, but like, yeah, like somebody who's just read about noble right view, not having practice, versus somebody who has gone through wrong view many times and then has seen it all, has been burned so many times, and then they come back and they say, yes, I get it. Like, if somebody tells them noble right view, and they're like, oh, all these times where I did this and I did that, like, wow. I'm just curious. Yeah, sorry. It's getting late. I'm rambling. That's sorry.
Okay, Willie. Well, enjoy yourself. Enjoy your sleep.
Gotcha.
Mindfully position the body and mindfully go to sleep, enjoying the relaxation.
Gotcha. I'll definitely call like on Saturday or over the weekend. Yeah. This is interesting stuff. It's good to be back in the swing of things.
Excellent. All right, Willie. Well, we'll see you later.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye.